Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. Welcome to the Chatter After, where we talk about all of our favorite movies. We wax poetic about the movies that we love, hate, or things that we just find are worth talking about. All movies have something to say, and we try to analyze what they capture. Again, welcome to the Chatter After. On this episode of the Chatter After, we are talking about Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, the sequel to the first Doctor Strange movie, which came out in 2016. It's been a long road to this Doctor Strange sequel because he's been in Infinity War, he's been in Endgame, he's been in Spider-Man No Way Home, and now he finally gets a proper sequel for his storyline. Joining me to talk about this movie, though, is none other than my good friend Nate Richard. Nate, thanks for joining me again.
Thank you. Thanks for
Round of
having me.
applause. Round of
Thank you.
applause. And of course, Christian, this is your first time here.
Yeah. Thank
First
you.
off,
Thank you. Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank
Give
you.
him a hand,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you.
I just
No,
feel
but
like a
seriously,
really
thank you so
bad
much
late
for
night
having.
TV host.
I mean, I got and we had some bad takes going on here. We got the nice little air horn. It's fun stuff. But seriously, thank you so much for having me on to the Chatter After podcast. It's an honor, really, and I don't really get a chance to guest on anyone else's podcast as much because I'm just so busy and like. But I'm glad that I'm here and I'm ready to talk some Doctor Strange too.
Yes. So, guys, if you have not seen Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, this is a spoiler-filled discussion. If you want spoiler-free, I'm gonna link everybody's reviews in the description down below. I know, Christian, you guys had a spoiler-free podcast, right, for Film Optics?
Correct.
So that's going to be down below. So is my review. And Nate, if you have any reviews, that's going to be in the description too.
Okay.
Um, but with that said, this is spoilers galore. Leave. That's all I have to say. We'll see you next time.
Turn back now.
So, guys, I want to know your first thoughts on this movie because it just starts and goes. Like, it might have the fastest start to any MCU movie in the last 6 years or so. I'm gonna start with you, Nate. The opening of this film is just hits the ground running, and it kind of caught me off guard a little bit. What are your thoughts on like how we got into this whole story with America Chavez?
Right away, I was kind of put off. Like I was like, because that opening dream sequence, I don't know if it was intentional or not. And like I wasn't seeing it in an IMAX screen, but like the visual effects right catching me off guard, and then like everything was just happening all at once. And it's
Yeah,
like even with Wanda's like reveal when she's talking with Strange, it's like, boom, no, I'm already evil. It's like,
yeah.
yeah, it's just it just starts the car and then is going fast and furious, start to finish.
I loved WandaVision. I loved everything we did with her character. Was it kind of weird how it feels like we skipped a step? We saw her with the Darkhold in the at the end of WandaVision, and all of a sudden, she's the bad guy.
She's the bad guy. She just, does whatever. It's so my initial reaction for this. I put it on Letterboxd. I guess I'll just read it really quick. I pretty much said that the film is a wild ride from like start to finish. I love the visual effects. Like holy crap, it's amazing. They're impressive, and I feel like we have taken a little bit more of a deeper dive into the multiverse. Some things do feel very surface level still, but like great performances with Elizabeth Olsen and Benedict Cumberbatch and everyone involved. And but it felt more like a Disney Plus TV special. Like this felt like episode 10 of WandaVision, where they're like, hey, sorry, it was supposed to be 10 episodes for WandaVision, and then it got cut for COVID. I feel I see what you're saying though, Mike, because as I said on our non-spoiler review or
Mhm.
spoiler free, whatever you want to call it, it feels like there's like a first act missing. Like it's weird because, like you said,
Yeah,
towards the end of WandaVision, we see her with the Dark Hold, and I guess it's just one of those things where things happen off screen. we see it with the Star Wars and things of that nature, especially from like A New Hope to Empire Strikes Back. It's like, oh, Luke finally meets up with the Resistance, but he doesn't. We don't really see him spending that much time like getting to know the Resistance and A New Hope. We see it more so in Empire Strikes Back, where it's like, oh, time skip, and then they're just doing whatever. But
Right.
it felt a little off, but it paid off for at least Elizabeth Olsen because her character is so layered. And I mean, I love my girl. I don't care how crazy she gets. She's my girl through and through. I'm in her corner. Like she has always been. She's my favorite female Avenger. And I mean, next to Spider-Man, like within the MCU, she ranks number two for me. I've always loved her character. I mean, her being, quote unquote, a mutant, but Marvel wasn't able to call them mutants there for a while, but now they still haven't. But I'm sure they're figuring that out. But
Yeah.
overall, I really liked this. I liked the story. I just had a few issues with it, with the pacing. Unfortunately, America Chavez, I loved her character, but I wish they would have done more with her. She felt more of like a damsel in distress. I felt like she could have done more displaying the power that she had. Since this is a spoiler review, with her having the ability to jump between different multiverses, and she doesn't dream. So I guess that's that's what she says in the movie, because we see that Wanda has these dreams. It's with about her children, and then we see the dream that Doctor Strange has about America Chavez and other versions of himself. But
Yeah.
they're like, it is a good movie. It's just there's a few missing parts, but like it's good, just not great. But I still enjoyed it all the same.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting you bring up America Chavez because that's a character that I don't know. It's again, it's weird because the movie feels like we skipped a step. We just meet her with,
Mm,
I guess we're calling him Supreme Strange, right? This
yeah.
variant of Doctor Strange. And they're already, it feels like in another movie. And she just falls into our 616 universe, like literally
Yeah.
falls into our Strange's lap, and he's stuck with her. And I don't know. I think that's what kind of made it a little off-putting for me because it's like, okay, we're in the middle of something and we're trying to catch up the entire time. And I don't think we ever fully get a grasp on things the way at least I wanted to. I don't know about you, Nate. Like, do you think introducing America that way, or like Christian was saying, her being like a damsel in distress and being virtually helpless the entire time, did that affect your enjoyment of the movie at all?
It kind of did, unfortunately. Overall, I did like the movie, but like, I know she's pretty popular in the comics. Like, I know she's a well received character, but here, she just felt like a walking MacGuffin to me. It
Yeah.
was really just like, oh, we need a way to get through the multiverse. Like, does she have that multiverse hopping power in the comics?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that is her. I'm not big on America Chavez storylines in the Young Avengers, but I'm pretty sure that is a consistent through line in the comic books where she can hop between the multiverse.
Mm. Yeah, I haven't read
Because
a comic in years, so I would not know.
Yeah. So it
I,
it feels thematic, but I think they could have done more with it personally.
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah.
I thought the actress did a good job. I can't pronounce her name.
Her first name, yeah,
Yeah,
It's
it's
like
tough.
Suchi Gomez.
yeah. Like she was really good, and I like how Marvel is getting more and more into the more like the Gen Z superheroes.
Yeah.
Mm.
Something that popped into my mind like earlier today is like all of us got into superheroes when we were kids, and it's like most of these superheroes are adults. I like seeing that more youthful kind of energy that we see with her, that we see even with Spider-Man, or what we'll see with Miss Marvel. And I like that presence that Miss Gomez, I'll just call her that,
Mm.
brought to the role of America Chavez, where I think she might in the MCU. I know in a lot of superhero movies they usually age these characters up quite a bit, and I think in the comics she's actually older,
Hmm.
if I'm not mistaken.
I'm not sure.
She's a member of the Young Avengers, so she's probably in that 16 to 20 range.
Okay.
and the actress is 16, so she's like
Yeah.
right at the
Yeah, I was gonna say
right
she
at
looked
the younger
fairly
side.
young. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just so used to like movie teenagers looking like me. Like,
Looking
John
like
it's not
Travolta
Toby
even
in
like
Maguire.
Wanda.
Grease.
Yeah.
It's like in Spider-Man 1 where the guy who played the teacher when they went to the lab was
Yes.
actually younger, like in actual age than like Toby Maguire and Kirsten Dunst, like the black dude with like the bald head, where
Mm.
he's like, "Don't interrupt this class one more time." I'm like, "Bro, you're younger than me, though." Like,
Yeah.
those are the days. Those are the days.
Yes.
Especially since you look at Marvel and Zendaya and Tom Holland are still playing high schoolers. Like they're finally
Yeah.
getting to college age from the
Mhm.
last movie. And so it's interesting how they decide to actually get somebody who is a teenager to play a
Yeah.
teenager for like the first
Amazing.
time ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like great job, guys. Great call. But it worked though. It gave a layer of like authenticity to that character.
It did.
Yeah.
Because you really felt like she was this young girl who was scared and in trouble, even though that's
Mm.
not the character America Chavez is in the comic books.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
um,
yeah. I mean,
but
it's adaptation, but yeah, I know what you mean.
yeah. So as a multiversal movie, I want to ask you guys this. I don't think this film did a good job presenting the multiverse coming off of Spider-Man, coming off of Loki, because we see all
Yeah.
these different variants, right? Like we see a variant of Mordo, and Doctor Strange literally says you're the exact same in every universe. And so it's like coming off of Spider-Man, where we have three different Peters who are distinctly different. Like those franchises are completely different from one another. Was it kind of weird how every version of Strange felt like Strange, and every version of Wanda was kind of like Wanda?
um,
Yeah.
I would say because so like when you're looking at Loki, obviously we've seen different variants of Loki and Sylvie and whatnot, even alligator Loki or the Thor or the Loki that actually killed Thor in their universe.
Yeah.
I I guess like when it comes to the multiverse stuff, like it's weird, but if you really think about it, it's like between Tony Stark and Stephen Strange, those two, like their egos are so big and they're so bullheaded that like and so stubborn that it's kind of funny and it kind of makes sense that like Strange is like essentially the same across every universe because of what his character is.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I see what you guys are coming from, but I just think it's funny that like, yeah, like Doctor Stephen Strange is that stubborn. Like he's basically a Taurus. Like he's that stubborn and that bullheaded that like every variant of him, more or less, he's he's just the same like egotistical type person. Because I feel like if we ever got a variant with like Tony Stark, it would be the same thing. Because it's just like how strong of his, I guess, his personality is, but maybe I don't really know. I just
He's
thought it was
so
kind of
set in
funny.
his ways that
Yeah.
across thousands of realities, he's pretty much the same dude.
Same dude. Maybe a little bit different here or there, but yeah, it's really funny how they did that though.
Yeah. I'll get to you, Nate, in a second. I just want to say one thing right quick. Because when you give it the title Multiverse of Madness, and it's weird because it's a very personal story really about Wanda Maximoff and a little bit about Stephen Strange. I thought that alternate version of Wanda would actually fight back and we would get Scarlet Witch versus Scarlet Witch. That's the type of stuff that I was expecting, and it kind of just fizzles out. But anyway,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts, Nate?
See, the scene that I like best with, because I know I criticized the visual effects at the beginning, but the scene where they're first jumping through the multiverse and it shows the place with like the dinosaurs and like the world with like paint and all those
Yeah.
different things. I'm like, is this what the movie's gonna be? Because like now this could be like the best Marvel movie if it like goes and does that. But
A
I
segment
was
of it being
surprised.
animated.
Yeah, just go that route. But part of me just they were stuck in that one multiverse where like the only difference was everything's a little more futuristic. the traffic lights are reversed, and pizzas come in the form of balls. And I, I'm glad that they didn't go like all in on like fan service with like cameos and getting like, oh, we're gonna get Eric Bana back as Hulk and Nicolas Cage back as Ghost Rider. Would that have been kind of cool? Yeah, but at the same time, I'm glad they kept it to that personal story. But I feel like there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be walking into this movie thinking this is going to be No Way Home times like 10. And it's going to call back to every Marvel movie like pre MCU. And it's not that at all. And it's really not even connected to No Way Home that much. They mentioned Spider-Man a couple of times. It's not really even a sequel to the first Doctor Strange because Chiwetel Ejiofor, it's not the same one that was in the first one. And like
Right.
the post-credit scene of that first movie was showing like, oh, he's gonna be like how he is in the comics, like Doctor Strange's biggest like enemy. And no, it's a different variant there. And really the only Wong is still there, but he's kind of been showing up everywhere in the MCU now. I know he's rumored to show up in other like upcoming projects as well.
Yeah.
But it felt more like a sequel to WandaVision. Like you're saying, Christian, it was like that one, it's like the lost episode of WandaVision.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, I'm
It's
not
that
mad
finale
about
that
it.
was missing Doctor Strange, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. It's because I mean we know they did reshoots for this. And
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
on our spoiler free review, I accidentally so IMDb has done this a few times. So if you go to IMDb, I'm not sure if they changed it or not, but it's like the original synopsis prior like pre reshoots. But Rotten Tomatoes has like the updated synopsis because the IMDb one kind of talks about how Wanda teams up with Doctor Strange and Wong and a few others to essentially reverse a spell that Doctor Strange has casted. Much like he kind of didn't know Way Home, but that was more so Spider-Man kind of intervening. But I was like, yeah, that's not right. And then I was like, oh yeah, it's probably an outdated synopsis, but yeah, it's I mean, like we said, it feels more like WandaVision, which is fine. It's just it's somewhere along the line, like obviously I'm sure they had plans for Doctor Strange too, but like I feel like we're kind of done with like this the quote unquote solo movies
Yeah.
where it's like, these Captain America 1, 2, and 3, Iron Man 1, 2, and 3, Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3, where like now that the multiverse is here, I mean we've seen a lot of like guest stars within each within like especially within phase 4 and phase 3 of heroes, but now it's just like everything's so open and so vast that anything can happen. So I feel like, at least for Doctor Strange, because he kind of like, even though he's not the Sorcerer Supreme, he still
He's
kind of is. Like, he's kind of the new unofficial leader of the Avengers. Because I mean, he's just as bullheaded as Tony Stark, just as egotistical, but since we're not going to get an Avengers movie for a while, so I really don't know what their plan is. We know that Kevin Feige is they're doing that retreat for like the next 10 years to like plan out things. But like eventually all this has to come to an end. But I mean they're planning out things, which is good, unlike Star Wars. But I would like I want to know how long this is actually going to run for. Like the whole Marvel cinematic universe type thing. Like is it just gonna be forever? Like are we still gonna be here at 60 years old? Oh my god, Doctor Strange 76 was amazing. Like Spider-Man
I
42.
I feel like that's what the multiverse is trying to set up, right? Like we can go to a universe because they already established that Spider-Man looks different in different realities.
Yeah.
So we can go to a universe where Doctor Strange isn't played by Benedict Cumberbatch because he doesn't want to do the role anymore, or we see T'Challa and Steve and Tony
Hmm.
on like the Ultimates universe, for example, right? I know nobody likes that Earth, but I'm just using that as an example since the MCU is 616. So I can see them doing something like that. I guess my thing with the WandaVision comparisons is that I'm fine with team up movies. I wanted a Doctor Strange movie.
I
And
agree.
it's weird
Yeah.
because it is telling this surprisingly personal story, even though it's in the multiverse. But it's not about Steven really, it's about Wanda. And
Division. No, I'm sorry.
yeah, and when that needle drop happened, theater cheered.
Dude, same. I was like, let's go. It transported me back. I loved it. And then, yeah, it's like at this point, it should have been a Wanda Maximoff movie, like
It really
starring
could have
Doctor
been.
Strange.
Yeah, it probably would have been better served that way because you think about it, we open with Christine's wedding and we keep posing the question, why isn't he happy? Will he be happy?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I missed it, but I don't think it was ever really answered what's going to make him happy.
No,
Yeah.
because it's like no matter what universe he was in with Christine, they never they never work things out.
Yeah.
So it's like, and that kind of calls back to the What If series, which by the way, I feel like Kevin Feige kind of dropped the ball with that because originally he said that yeah, all these MCU movies and these new TV series, you have to watch the series in order to understand the movies. Then they backtracked on that. That was a bit BS, but because it's like there's so many things that we get Captain Carter. We obviously get kind of like the dark sorcerers or not, or the dark Doctor Strange kind of sorta, or at least
Strange
zombies.
Supreme. Yeah.
Yeah, Strange Supreme or zombie
Yeah.
Strange and stuff like that. But I I I love how we get Billy and Tommy back, Speed and Wiccan, but like in everywhere in the universe, they're never using their powers. And like I want to see these little these little rugrats like just start wrecking. That's what I want to see. Like,
I
when
was
are they
surprised we didn't see
gonna
Vision in those realities either. That was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that too. I don't know. Like, do all these realities kind of just run the course? Or is every Wanda the same age? Is every Doctor Strange the same age? Or, I don't really know. But apparently with Spider-Man, that's not the case. So
Yeah, that's also the Sony universe. So maybe it's like
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Spider-Man doesn't exist in the Sony universe. As we
but
know. He's a myth.
yeah, he's a myth, and even if he was real, he'd be a menace, as J.K. Simmons would say. But Nate, like, how are you feeling about what we've been talking about the last couple minutes?
Just that I felt like with the Wanda stuff, it I know like Doctor Strange, I guess it kind of sells a little more than Scarlet Witch, but back to what we were saying about the reshoots. I felt like the reshoots were a response to like the phenomenon that WandaVision was.
Yeah.
Because I feel like more than any other MCU TV show, except probably up to Moon Knight now, I don't think any of the Marvel shows really dominated the conversation like WandaVision did, where it got even like non-comic book people talking about WandaVision, like people like my parents who like the callbacks to shows like Bewitched or All in the Family. Like that's what they watched that for, and then they got invested in that story versus something like Loki or Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I feel like we might have liked those. We might have been keeping up to date in our circles, but at
Yeah.
the same time, it's not like everybody was like talking about it. It's not like your neighbor, your next door neighbor asks you all about it and wants to like discuss what happened. And I feel like a lot of this is just like Marvel almost being reactive, like how we've seen DC be and how we've seen even Star Wars be, where they're just like, wait, people actually really like Elizabeth Olsen as Scarlet Witch. We gotta like make this role like bigger. We can't just have her play like second fiddle because I feel like the standalone like sequels to these solo movies, it kind of ended with Civil War in a way. Like that was the first big sequel where it was like a co-star between Captain America and Iron Man. And then you had Thor Ragnarok, which was co-starring Thor and Hulk. And then we have Thor 4 coming, Love and Thunder. That's going to be co-starring Thor, and then Jane Foster's Mighty Thor, and then Guardians of the Galaxy are showing up in that as well. And there's just things like that are just, I feel like it's gotten to a point where they don't know exactly what they're doing in this phase. And I get the multiverse stuff, but like the only reference we've had of like Kane the Conqueror, who's supposedly the next big villain,
Yeah, we still
was
haven't
in,
seen much. Loki was the last time we
yeah,
saw him. And that
The
was
the
first and
last
only
time.
time we saw him.
yeah. Oh, Jonathan Majors. Oh.
I thought they said Loki was going to tie into Multiverse of Madness, but I didn't see any like connective tissue
I wonder if that
whatsoever.
was prior. I wonder if that was prior to the reshoots. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like out of nowhere, we just got like another like, oh, like, Doctor Strange's Multiverse of Madness is doing reshoots. I was like, why?
Yeah.
You'd think it'd be to add more
To it.
multiversal cameos and stuff to it,
Yeah.
right? But it felt like it was just changing the overall story structure.
It's taking things
Yeah.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, because you think about it, Kevin Feige, when he announced it, he said Multiverse of Madness, WandaVision, Spider-Man. That's essentially a multiverse trilogy, and Loki kind of fills the gaps. And none of that happens. They're all
Mhm.
independent of each other. Like, think
Yeah.
about Spider-Man is Peter's own thing that Doctor Strange helps him out with and inadvertently causes. This, you think would be, I feel like a plot would be the TVA comes after Doctor Strange for messing with the timeline and the multiverse and all that stuff, but instead, it's America randomly showing up with multiversal powers. And so it doesn't feel like these were supposed to connect, even though that's how they kind of marketed all of these projects.
Mhm.
And I think again, if this was a solo like Doctor Strange centric story and the multiverse was around it, it wouldn't be a big deal. But since it's a Wanda story, it doesn't connect to WandaVision as much as it probably could have if it was just a Wanda movie. So
Right.
you're kind of shortchanging all of it when you think about it, because again, you set all that stuff up with Christine and even Mordo, which having Strange and Mordo have beef throughout the entire multiverse is an interesting concept,
Mm.
but we don't follow through with it because we have to go to the next world that's pretty bland and uninteresting. Like I feel like going to the go like if you're gonna have Xavier, go to the X-Men universe. Just do it.
Yeah.
Just go to the Logan universe. You have Hugh Jackman
We
in a
should send
western
them
for
the truth.
20 minutes.
Yeah, that would have been cool. I mean, because I guess this is from Culture Crave I found earlier. I guess Kevin Feige confirmed that King dying and Loki allowed Doctor Strange's spell in Spider-Man No Way Home to go wrong. And he's saying, there's always a method to the madness. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. So we know how No Way Home connects to everything that happened to Loki, because that seems to be the the main thing that caused this whole multiverse type thing. And it's like, when does Multiverse of Madness happen in phase 4? Because like you guys said, we're seeing it in some Disney Plus shows, but like things like Hawkeye. Well, actually, I think that happens after Spider-Man No Way Home. I believe so. Because the Christmas tree's back up, and I think they
Mhm.
mention, or is it before? I think it was after, because
I
they mentioned that the Statue of Liberty was destroyed with the new Cap shield, and they had to like rebuild it again. So I think it does happen after No Way Home.
Yeah.
It has to. Well, Yelena says she wants to go see the new Statue of Liberty, so I guess it is finished. So that would make sense.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
it just depends on where it's falling, but I see what you guys are saying. It seems like they're taking bits, and like they're taking bits from like a Doctor Strange story that they want to tell, and then from Wanda, and then like, oh, let's throw in America Chavez, and like it's fine. This is how they introduce America Chavez, because she's this time traveling superhero type, or young Avenger essentially. But I
Yeah.
I wonder if I wonder if like how they're gonna tie her to the Young Avengers. I guess she's now in 616, because she thinks that she killed her parents, when 9 times out of 10 she just transported them somewhere else. So it's like, I don't really think her parents are dead, but It's like what she's visited 70 something universes so far.
Yeah.
And one thing I actually noticed between this and Everything Everywhere All at Once, you know
Yeah.
how they do like the time jumping, or they're borrowing like skills from someone else, like another version. They
Yeah.
kind of do that with the Book of the Damned with Wanda, but she's controlling another her, which is weird. But like it's kind of the same. I don't know, but there's so many good things about this, but it's like they kind of miss in other ways. But I need to see it again to really understand,
Yeah.
or sink my teeth into it. Sorry,
True.
rant over.
True. No, I'm just thinking. You mentioned Everything Everywhere. Great movie. Um, I didn't out of the two, I didn't expect that one to be the one I enjoyed more
I agree,
before
man.
the start of the year. But
Yeah.
yeah, um, I want to talk to you guys about the the good things we liked about this movie, right? Because we're harping on a lot of the negatives, but I feel like we all enjoyed this movie for the
Oh
most
yeah.
part.
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
so I want to make sure we don't just keep harping on the issues. Um, First off, this was a horror movie, essentially, right? This was Marvel's horror
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
How do you guys think about Sam Raimi coming back in the director's chair?
Oh, loved it. Absolutely loved it. Like
Yes.
this movie is no, do not take your kids to see this movie. That's all because they will have nightmares for weeks. Everything that happened with Wanda, like I mean, just the way that she killed Xavier. I was like,
Oh my
let's
God.
go. But I will say, like, I loved Wanda's story. Like I said before, she's my second favorite superhero in the MCU. I feel like
Mhm.
it's it was so deep and like she's like one of the most layered people out, like characters out there. I've kind of touched on the CGI. I was like, that looked phenomenal. The jokes landed 100%. I absolutely loved it. I love what they were trying to, this I felt like it was fractured and crazy um on purpose because I mean that is all the madness. But Sam Raimi coming back, like, and we kind of talked about this in our non-spoiler with Amanda from AMX NDA reviews from Canon Cinema and Collider. She had mentioned that it this movie does not. She mentioned that this movie does not work without Sam Raimi because, like she said, if you put any other director in the chair, it's not going to work because this is supposed to be that crazy type, nightmarish, fever dream type of episode within the MCU we're supposed to get, or at least I like to view the MCU as like another comic run, obviously, but it's like
Yeah.
it's its own thing, and I feel like people forget that where it's like, okay, like in this universe, 616, not, Earth 999, whatever, or 6969, whatever the heck you want to call it. It's in
Nice.
this universe how, everything goes the way it's supposed to. And it's like, I mean, I would love to see, like, I view it more as a comic run. People are like, oh, well, so and so's not going to come back. And it's like, what happened to Wanda though? Like, where is she? Where is she? Did she just poof? Like,
We
I
need
know
to
my
know.
girl did not get killed by a pile of rubble because I saw that
Yeah.
little red thing towards the end. I was like, where is she?
That's a brutal death scene if that's what that really was, though.
I
Yeah.
don't need another Game of Thrones rubble kill scene with. Oh man, I'm so bad. I'm sorry. I'm getting off track. But there's so much I love about this movie. To answer your question, Mike, mainly
Mm.
everything with Wanda. I mean, I loved seeing Benedict Cumberbatch back as Doctor Strange. Like I
Oh
said
yeah,
before, the
he's great.
jokes land, and it's. I mean, the story does what it's supposed to. Like, it really tugs at the heartstrings. I mean, just seeing all the cameos as well. Like, I was not
Yes.
spoiled by the
I
cameos.
was.
So when I saw, I mean, we knew Xavier was there. He was rolling this big, like Hummer esque, like type, chair that he had rocking. But when I saw Monica Rambeau, the other guy from Inhumans, I think it was. I never saw that show.
I
Um,
That's the one I like out of all of the cameos.
first I was
That's
like,
the
who's
one that
that?
got.
I was
That's
like,
what that got me.
Yeah.
I watched that crappy Inhuman show pretty much from start to finish, and I'm just like, really,
bless your soul.
really. Out of all of the cameos we could have got Ben Affleck's Daredevil, and this is what you guys decided to do.
I thought that was so funny though. But then like
It was
seeing
great.
John Krasinski's Reed Richards neck
Yes.
is what blew my mind. I had no clue that was coming. No clue. I was like, I swear I'm the only person in my credit screen. I was like, I was like, oh my gosh. And everyone's like, what the hell is wrong with this kid? Like, it's just some dude with guys needs to shave who's in a blue suit. I'm like, that's him. Like, the ultimate fan casting people have been asking for forever. And I was like, wow. And then seeing, Monica Rambeau as Captain Marvel, like it was a great lineup. I loved it.
Yeah, it was great. Nate, what are your thoughts on? Christian went on a big tangent.
I'm so sorry.
Love.
I get this.
No,
I do
I,
apologize.
I love it. I love the enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Nate, you can work your way back to Sam Raimi's direction if you want, but we're here. Let's just go. The Illuminati.
All
What are
right.
your thoughts?
The Illuminati, unfortunately, I'll go back to Sam Raimi shortly, but the Illuminati, like, I had that spoiled. I was just like cruising Twitter, like on Sunday, like after a run, and then I just had like a blip of it, like, so and so just took out, oh, the Illuminati. I'm like, damn it. Like, I was so.
Did you know
I
who
felt
was
like
in the Illuminati, or just know that they got
I-
axed off?
I saw Black Bolt and I saw John Krasinski.
No. Oh.
And those were the two like cool surprises. But at the same, because I already knew Captain Carter, Marvel spoiled Captain Carter
They
in the
ruined
TV
that one.
spot, and they spoiled Professor Xavier. So like the only one that, and they kind of spoiled Monica Rambeau's Captain Marvel because you saw that in the trailer.
Right.
Like the only one, who was the other one that I'm forgetting?
The only one left was Mordo.
Mordo. Yeah,
But
he was the only
Oh,
one.
We
yeah,
knew he was
Mordo.
there.
Yeah. But at the same time, it was still so cool because like I clicked away so fast. I didn't see like how they looked. And just seeing John Krasinski finally as Mr. Fantastic just made me so happy. In my theater, it was a press screening, but still everybody was like applauding that scene when he shows up and the scene where Bruce Campbell shows up.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But,
Yeah.
Pizza Papa.
Right.
That was amazing. But just seeing them there, and then the comment Doctor Strange makes about Black Bolt having a fork on his head, almost making him kind of a butt of a lot of the jokes.
Yeah.
Almost they still made him cool, but they still kind of tease that like character, and I like that because like I think they're aware that they really messed up with like the Inhumans because they were for a while. I remember like before Age of Ultron came out when they announced all those films at that event, they were hyping up like Inhumans, like it was gonna be like their big thing. And then
Marvel's only failure, right?
yeah, and then a couple years later, like Disney buys Fox, so now we have X-Men. See you guys. So just seeing, and the costumes were actually cool. Like even for Black Bolt, I thought it was actually better than I would have expected it to look. And then I do hope that we do continue to see like John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic. I don't know if that was just like a stunt casting, like the Evan Peters and WandaVision. Because again, what you guys were saying about the personalities of Strange and Tony Stark, Reed Richards is very similar, where he's incredibly intelligent. He's very in his own head.
I don't know how. I was gonna say I don't know how much you guys are into Fantastic Four comic books, but there's literally like the Council of Reeds, where it's just an Illuminati essentially of just Reed Richards. So it could be something like that.
That's funny.
But then seeing Wanda, like when it shows like the security footage of her walking in, you're just like, oh shit. Like what?
Barefooted.
And then And then when she like just out and out kills Black Bolt, it's like I feel like some people are gonna be like some like diehard like Marvel fans will be mad about that, but that's what I loved about this movie was like
Yeah.
the audacity to do that. Like they're not. It kind of proved to me like I become a little bit of a hipster where it's like, oh, they're just into crowd pleasing. No, they literally introduced John Krasinski and then made him into string cheese like minutes later.
It
I
was
find that
so heartbreaking too, because she's like,
it
it shows
was.
how big of a hypocrite Wanda was in that moment because she
Yeah.
kills him, and all like, well, at least Franklin has his mother.
Yeah.
Over.
Listen, she said, I'm being merciful. And then she was done with being merciful. She said, okay. She said, all right, the gloves are coming off. And I imagine it was funny how they introduced the Illuminati and then everyone just gets mowed down by Wanda. I can only imagine it's kind of like when Anakin finally turns to the dark side.
Yeah.
You have Mace Windu rolling up with all these Jedi to come, take over Emperor Palpatine. And then they just I'm like, I thought you were Jedi. Like, you just
Yeah.
oh my god, he's so powerful. And it's like I'm being overpowered. And it's so funny. That's kind of how it reminds me of. Or like it's kind of like the off-screen scene of Anakin like killing off the younglings. It's
Yeah.
like the one
Yeah.
she just one by one, and the only one that really takes a little bit for the fight was Monica Rambeau. And it's like, okay, Captain Marvel's gonna come in and take care of this. Nope. I'm like, well, we are talking about the one hero that almost single-handedly took down Thanos.
Yeah.
And whew, she just goes off. I was like,
Yeah.
The most brutal kills for me were Black Bolt and my girl Captain Carter. That was
Yeah.
just like, you have the
dude.
great moment of her saying, "I can do this all day,"
Yeah.
and then you
She
just
looks
take her
great,
out
by
like
the way.
seconds later. Oh yeah, well, fantastic.
Oh
I
yeah.
want them to revisit that character,
Yeah,
Mhm.
me
but I
too.
feel like that might have been it.
Yeah.
I
I
did not expect him to die that quickly. I was like, oh, so this is the way they're going.
Yeah.
but I feel like only Sam Raimi could have pulled that off. So like going to that
Mhm.
comment, like I remember when Scott Derrickson like dropped out of directing, and it was right before COVID, like months before everything shut down. I think it was like January 2020. And like I was like, that's a little weird because he was like so passionate about that first Doctor Strange. And I liked that first movie, but it wasn't like the best Marvel movie or anything. But then
Right.
when they announced like Sam Raimi, I'm like, that's a little odd because it's like he's an even more distinct director than a Scott Derrickson who will just kind of do, a Marvel movie. And like Sam Raimi, his Spider-Man movies, like I just rewatched those right before I saw No Way Home during Christmas time. And it's like those movies feel so distinct. And I'm like, how are they going to go about this? Because I feel like I'm going to harp on Marvel just a little bit. I feel like some of these directors that they bring in, they have such like creative voices, but then they kind of like cut like corners and just make it fit in. I think the only
Mhm.
directors that they don't like restrain as much are James Gunn, which is a little surprising considering he wasn't even a big name when he was brought on, but those movies still feel distinctly his own. And Taika Waititi.
Mm. It's kind of the Kevin Feige is like the overseer in like all of
Yeah.
this. So I do see what you're saying. It does seem that like they give these great creatives like you said, and then it's like, oh, but it needs to be like the Disney-fied version of
Yeah.
everything. And like it's like obviously sometimes studio interference is a good thing, but
Oh yeah.
depending on the situation. And because I
Yeah.
know Patty Jenkins was she supposed to do Squadron, or she wanted to do something Marvel related, but she kind
Thor
of made
too.
it
Yeah.
Thor 2. Yeah. And then she had said that, they don't, it's just, she wasn't really able to bring what she wanted to. But like sometimes it's a really great thing, but then we also see, something like the air cut.
Yeah.
It's like, yikes.
Because
Oh boy. Yeah.
but one thing that I noticed right away, even though I wasn't like big on that first 35 or 45 minutes, this felt distinctly Sam Raimi.
Yes, it did.
And
sure.
the further and further it got along, it felt more and more his personality, even more like his Evil Dead, like Drag Me to Hell personality, even more than like his Spider-Man movies.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Especially with, I love, that might be like, and I'm not using hyperbole, like the scene has stuck out to me so much. Like, my favorite cut to credits moment was that abrupt shot of that third eye growing on Doctor Strange's head, because it was just like, what? Like, is that supposed to be a happy ending, or is that supposed to be like a what is going on? And it was that felt Sam Raimi, the camera movements. This movie, for the first like act of it, I'm like, this isn't a horror movie. And then that scene where Wanda like contorts her body, is crawling out of the mirror, I'm like, what the hell?
So
she
scary.
was
That
on
was
a mission.
Freaky. And even that
Oh,
scene
man.
where Professor Xavier is like going into that like white space with Wanda there, terrifying. Or when they're in like that sewer, waiting with the jump scare. This movie's
Dude.
actually kind of scary. Like, this is like the first like Marvel movie, I think, with like legit jump scares.
I
It
loved
was
it.
It was legit scary because think about.
Yeah.
First off, I just want to go back to how great of a director Sam Raimi is with that Xavier scene. Right, you have him standing, and it's framed really, really. It's eerie, even though nothing's happening.
Yeah.
It's so creepy, but it also has the same like color palette as X3, so it looks
Yeah.
kind of like that Last Stand flashback, which I feel like was very intentional because it felt like he was going to visit Jean Grey, right? And I just love the nuance and subtlety in that moment. But going back to what you were saying, Nate, about how terrifying this is, the third act of this movie, the final battle of this movie, Doctor Strange is puppeting his own corpse that he buried at the begin. This is something out of Rick and Morty. He buried at the beginning of this movie.
Yeah.
In his backyard, and now he's puppeting it to fight the Scarlet Witch, which is just insane.
I need to see this movie again.
That was
yeah.
And he was giving that like emotional speech to America Chavez
Yes.
while he's a corpse. Like, I love that. Like, I love it. Almost felt like he was making, and not the same personality, but the same touch he does with like Bruce Campbell's like Ash Williams and his Evil Dead movies. Like,
yeah,
he's still the hero, but he's going through the most weird, bonkers stuff like that Marvel would let him get away with Doctor Strange. And surprisingly, they let him get away with quite a bit. More than like
PG-13 movie. I was like,
yeah,
wow.
because I remember somebody was like, "Oh, could Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness be rated R?" And I'm like, I was just like laughing that off. I'm like, if the Batman can't be rated R, like,
right?
There's no way. This is Disney. No, this movie's like dark. You see her like Scarlet Witch like snapping necks, like she's a monster.
Yeah. Well, we kind of see that even with when Thanos got killed, when Thor like beheaded him. I was like,
oh,
wow.
It feels like every few movies Marvel's allowed to like go really hard.
Yeah.
It must be the reward system.
Right?
Or
it's you get one decapitation or one neck stab every 3 movies. That's the deal.
I just remember how like freaky it was in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, like when John Walker's like beating the guy with the shield and seeing that with like the blood.
Yeah.
Like I like my Marvel movies like light and everything, but I also like having those hints of like the edginess there.
Yeah.
Like you don't need to make it R, but you could still have those moments of darkness where you don't need to chip in and add the humor. And I think this movie did really well with like doing that.
Yeah.
I also think Marvel does a really good job of setting that up though, right? Because
they
get you into that, oh, there's a Marvel formula. These all feel the same. And then out of nowhere, they hit you with something like this. And it's like, we've watched horror before. This is not the scariest thing you're ever gonna
No,
see.
no, not
Yeah,
at all.
Even
yeah.
by
No.
even by PG-13 standards, it's
Oh,
not that bad.
Yeah.
But for
no.
Marvel, it came out of nowhere, and that by
Yeah.
itself was effective.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's I know it's the whole Marvel formula thing. It's like I get kind of tired of people saying that because it's like this is a cinematic universe. Like things are gonna feel the same. Like it
Yeah.
does feel like I mean Marvel is a factory. Like they pump these things out, and like in retrospect, it's like I mean I guess you could say besides like Captain Marvel because that was just shoehorned in right before Endgame. That's the only reason,
Mhm.
the main reason why I didn't like it. And it's like she wasn't a very layered character to begin with, but it's like with the formula, it's like there's nothing wrong with it. Like it works. Like we have these surprises. Not everything necessarily feels the same, but it's like I mean, it is a comic book story, so it's like people need to understand that like this is adapting something that's been around for decades, and it's
Yeah.
like they're literally just mimicking, changing and adapting specific things, to kind of work for a cinematic experience. But it's like I mean, it's all coming from the same place, so does that mean that Marvel Comics or DC Comics itself is formulaic? I mean, probably. So it's like it's just mimicking what came before in a different format. But like to say that, oh, like not every single Marvel movie needs to be something different because like it works and like it just like overall they're like I can't say there's objectively been like a bad, like when I say bad Marvel movie, I mean like just downright like MCU movies. Sorry, not
Yeah.
Morbius or anything like that. But objectively, there really
We don't
hasn't
do
been
that
like
here.
a bad MCU movie. Like, I mean, I didn't really care for Captain Marvel all that much, but like, I don't hate it. And I feel like that's a very strong word because a lot of, I feel like a lot of critics are overcritical sometimes about certain things, especially it always seems to go back to like superhero movies and whatnot. But it's like they've done a great job with like there's so many different genres within the MCU. And we're finally starting to get into more of the horror aspect. And people may not like it, and that's fine because horror not isn't everyone's favorite. I used to hate horror movies when I was younger, but now I like them a lot. There's still some I won't touch, Insidious or Conjuring. Just stay over there. But
Mhm.
I just sometimes I just kind of get annoyed. Everyone's like, oh, like Marvel's formulaic. It's like say something else that's quote unquote wrong with Marvel instead of saying that
Yeah.
it's formulaic all like over and over again because you just people sound like a broken record when they say that. And it's like, is there any other like, valid criticism that you can come up with besides, oh, they all feel the same? It's like, well, I mean, who cares? Like it's super like this is as much superhero stuff we've gotten in like
Yeah.
forever. Like all we had growing up was it was Spider-Man and X-Men. That was like it. And Blade if you were old enough. But it's like that's all we had. Like I mean superhero fatigue, call it superhero fatigue, whatever, but it's like I'm glad these characters in stories like Doctor Strange 2, as incomplete as it does feel, are like we're finally getting to that point where like it's a learning thing, like with every new movie that Marvel comes out with and even DC, like they're still learning within the process. And it's like not every movie is gonna please everyone, but they haven't really made like a like objectively bad movie for the MCU.
Yeah, and go ahead, Nate.
Sorry
Sorry.
about that.
Oh yeah. No, I was gonna say because I've been that snarky guy. I think I've even been like that earlier, where I'm like, oh, they're all following a formula. But I look back, it does work. I mean, I like almost all the Marvel movies. I even like Captain Marvel,
Yeah.
surprisingly. Like the only one that I actually think is bad to like in my mind is the
Mm,
second Thor movie. But like all of them, yeah, some are better than others, but they work. And I
yeah.
think they've gotten better with movies like this or Guardians or how Thor Love and Thunder looks to be, or even how Moon Knight is right now, where they feel they can follow that storyline, but I think they're starting to treat more of their filmmakers like they did with James Gunn
Mm,
or like a Taika Waititi and letting them kind of, do their thing because it looks that way. even Eternals. I know that movie didn't get the best reviews,
Mm.
but I could see a lot of Chloe Zhao's like touches in that movie because that movie isn't really how a lot of like the Marvel movies like play out.
Right.
Right.
It was very, very self-serious. Like I know
Very
there's it.
serious.
I know there was a stupid IKEA joke, but like other parts of it, it felt like they were trying to do like an epic,
Mm.
like a near
Like
like
a
three
Greek
hour.
mythos epic type thing,
Yeah.
almost. Yeah.
Which is
So
to me one of like the film's faults is that it wanted to go there, but we didn't spend enough
mm,
time in each time period for it to be effective
yeah,
for me. But
Mm.
I'd rather
yeah,
them try and go there than to keep just
mm,
pumping out Ant-Man movies, you know? Like make sprinkle in something different once in a while, even if it doesn't
Yeah.
yeah,
work all the time.
It's like the Star Wars effect. Like people like, Force Awakens comes out. Amazing. I absolutely love it. Everyone's like, well,
yes,
it's too much like A New Hope. And it's like, okay. Then we give you The Last Jedi. And they're like, oh my God, this is so like, they're like, we want something different. They give you The Last Jedi and they're like, this is terrible. We need to go back to, what it was before. And then surprise, surprise, Rise of Skywalker's still crap. And it's like written and directed by Reddit. Like that's literally what that movie was.
yeah,
Pretty much.
Like Disney had an opportunity to move Star Wars into a different, into a different avenue. And like Marvel's doing the same thing. They're trying out different genres. I mean, like Eternals, I feel is like one of the more mature Marvel movies today, along with this when it comes to the horror aspect. But it's like they're trying different things, and then they get pegged and like shunned and shamed for like Eternals or for Multiverse of Madness, things of that nature. They try to do something different, but then people also want to say the form, like they're formulaic, and it's almost as if someone from Twitter, I can't remember what it was, like the big twist of Moon Knight from episode 4, with the insane asylum and whatnot, like them being in purgatory and whatnot. Everyone's like, oh well, that's not. All the comic creators are like, well, that's just from the comics. That's not like a mind twisting thing. It's like out of all these years that people have been complaining that the MCU is not like the comics, the one time that it is, you're still complaining. You cannot
yeah,
win with people when it comes.
What
And I
what's
think I was actually talking to Mike about it when
yeah.
I mentioned that. He's like, you can't. It's a lose lose. It's a catch 22. Like you're screwed either way.
What's funny about that specific thing is that Moon Knight is a character. Did y'all even know that character existed before Marvel announced the show? Like,
I'd
not
heard of it maybe once or twice,
you
maybe
know,
in
I knew
passing,
the
but
name
that
yeah.
from
is
The Lego games. I knew he was there, and I'm like, oh yeah, he's cool, but that's about it.
But exactly right. So a Moon Knight twist following the comics is still a twist for most people.
Yeah,
So
especially
I
people
mean,
who don't read comics.
it's not like this was a Batman movie trying to play up the Waynes dying as a surprise twist, right? It's a character most people have never heard of. Like they tricked people into thinking that Stephen Grant was the main personality
I thought he
for like
was.
half the series when that wasn't the case in the comics. It was Mark. And
Yeah.
they finally revealed that, and that took half the audience by surprise.
Yeah. It's great.
But I want to go back to something you said earlier, Christian, about how this is the Marvel universe, the Marvel Cinematic Universe version of these characters, right? It
Mhm.
reminds me of a comic book run where a specific writer, artist come in, they do the character for however many years they want to do it, and then
Mhm.
somebody else comes in. That's what it feels like is happening where the MCU is taking these ideas, taking these stories, and the run was the Infinity Saga. Phase 4 is the one shots, right? Where a different writer, different director comes in,
so
they tell one story, and then somebody else comes in. That's basically what happened with Thor, right?
Mhm.
Taika comes in, gives his spin on Thor. He might leave. Somebody picks up Mighty Thor. And so I feel like that is the area we're in where Marvel is basically being like a comic book. You pick one up,
Exactly.
you might not like it. You just like, if you don't like Eternals, you just know not to come for Eternals too. That doesn't mean you swear off of Marvel as an
yeah,
entire brand, right? Like in comics, I'm not a huge Green Lantern fan. I'm just not going to read Green Lantern. I'm just going to pick up Teen Titans and go on my way. You know, I'm not going to swear off DC Comics. And that's something you mentioned Star Wars. That's something I wish Star Wars understood because we don't know what's happened with that Ryan Johnson trilogy, right? We,
I hope it
the Book of
happens.
Boba Fett felt like The Mandalorian, and it's like, let them be their own thing. Let them have their own separate audiences so more people can enjoy Star Wars instead of
Yeah.
catering to one type of fan.
It's yeah, with Star Wars, it seems that Disney is afraid or hesitant to move forward outside of the Skywalker saga. Because again,
Yeah.
they tried to do that with The Last Jedi. It was in the palm of their hand. It was right there. And then I loved the ending of The Last Jedi. It was amazing. And even Kylo Ren said, "You're holding on. Let the past die." Like this man could have just
Kill it
said,
if you have to.
"Have to." And I loved what Ryan Johnson did with that. And it exactly with Marvel, it's like, this is just the comic book run in a cinematic universe format. Like you said, yeah, like Frank Miller's Batman and those runs and things of that nature. So it's everyone has their own take on the character. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I mean, yeah, it'd be cool if you had like the same director doing every Marvel movie, though. It's like that's not how you run a business. Like,
Yeah.
it's like that's not how you sell and like market these products. Like you're supposed to get different minds of, oh, Patty Jenkins wants to do Wonder Woman, then maybe after a few runs with her, someone else wants to pick up the character and have their own adaptation of Wonder Woman. And even with like Spider-Man, I know I've listened to, I forgot what podcast it was. They were saying that like as much as they love Spider-Man, there's a version of Spider-Man in their head that will essentially trump everyone else's because that version in their head hasn't been adapted and probably never will. Just
Yeah.
because it's like, same thing with Superman and Batman doesn't kill, Superman doesn't kill, like from Man of Steel. And it's like, well, that was the Zack Snyder's vision of the character. Just like if Zack Snyder were to make a comic book run, it would probably be the same thing. And it's like you
Yeah.
said, Mike, if you don't like it, that's fine. Like there's like 25 other films out there plus more. Like they're doing a retreat. Marvel is doing a retreat. Kevin Feige's going off to like Costa Rica or something with all of Marvel Studios, and they are planning the next 10 years of Marvel. At least we have a plan with Marvel Studios, unlike Star Wars, because it seems with Star Wars they're very hesitant after the backlash of Last Jedi. Then after Rise of Skywalker, they're like, okay, we're not doing any more Star Wars movies. It's like Marvel has been pumping out and it is so impressive of where we are right now with
Yeah.
Multiverse Madness. Because if you would have told me all this crap was happening when I was a kid, I would have been like, what are you talking? Like, yeah, right. Like, it's such a great time, like, to be a comic book fan. Like, regardless if you watch, like, the old shows or read the comics in general, like, it's reaching a wider audience. Like you guys said earlier with WandaVision, like, your parents were getting involved into it, and it's like, it's such a magical universe. Like, call it the same, call it whatever. It's insane. I love it, and I'm here to stay.
The fact that you were so invested in Wiccan and Speed alone shows how powerful the MCU
I
is,
was
right?
like, yes, I get like I love Teen Titans. I love Teen Titans. Like I love like the miniature versions, like the younger heroes who are still trying to figure things out. Like granted, Speed and Wiccan are probably still like 10 years old, 11, maybe 12. So it's
Mhm.
like but I really wish we would have seen a little bit of their powers because like man, when the X-Men comes to the MCU, I'm ready. I am
Oh
ready.
yeah. I feel like we're gonna get Wiccan and Speed in a couple years.
I hope so.
Because if you know anything about their characters, they have the same drive and love for their mother that she has for them. So there might be a multiversal version of those kids who gets a hold of the Darkhold and travels to our universe to
Mm,
find their mom. And that
yeah.
would be an incredible Scarlet Witch series. Um,
Oh, I love it. Someone get Kevin Feige on the phone right now.
he's probably got it on his blackboard in Cancun.
Probably. We're going to Venice, baby.
Guys, was like Nate, was there anything else you wanted to talk about with Multiverse of Madness? I know we've been all over the
I'm sorry.
spectrum.
Yeah.
I went on a rant. I do apologize.
No,
That
no,
was
but no, I
No, that
love
was awesome.
it's great because a movie this scale has us thinking that big, right? Which I feel
yeah.
like the Multiverse of Madness had us going all over the place. It's kind of fitting. So don't
Yeah.
apologize. But Nate, any thoughts on anything else?
I mean, I kind of ragged on this movie a lot, but like I really did like it quite a bit. And I
Yeah.
think I like how they kept it weird. I like how it was distinctly Sam Raimi's movie. And I like how they kept it not banking on like fan service or nostalgia, but on making this a personal story of Wanda. I don't think the Strange and Rachel McAdams storyline, that was the one thing I wanted to touch on
Yeah.
because I love Rachel McAdams. Like anytime she pops up, she'll be the bright spot of like even a terrible movie. But I in the first movie, I just felt like she was kind of wasted. Like she was just there to be the love interest, the ex-girlfriend of Doctor Strange. And it's like, why are you gonna use like she's an Academy Award nominated actress? Like
Hey, at least she has not the prominent YouTuber.
Of
uh,
course. It's funny you mention that, Nate, because it, it it makes me think of the other love interests, right? It makes you think of Pepper Potts or
yeah,
Peggy Carter, and like the love interest in the Marvel movies, they they actually play vital roles in the story, and I love most of them.
mhm,
The only one that I really don't get into is Wasp, but aside from that, I
yeah,
feel like every love interest, aside from the Incredible Hulk, have been really solid. And so it's kind of weird how you have Rachel McAdams, great actress. She has the chops to be Scarlet Witch. She could have been Scarlet
yeah,
Witch.
Oh yeah, she could
yeah.
have. Yeah.
And then they have the Night Nurse character, but they don't let her do anything because Rosario Dawson was basically that character on Defenders. So they kind of played into that in this film, but still they didn't give her a lot. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, I liked her arc better here than in the first one, but at the same time, I just don't feel like even I feel like they're Love and Thunder because I know a lot of people ragged on Hemsworth and Portman's like chemistry, but I feel
Yeah.
like Love and Thunder is gonna fix a lot of that. Whereas this, I just still don't feel like there's that much like chemistry between Benedict Cumberbatch and like Rachel McAdams, where I could see like, yeah, they were sleeping together at one point.
I
You
forget
know?
every single time that they're dating. Like
Yeah.
I watched Doctor Strange 1 the same day we went to see Multiverse of Madness.
Oh, did you?
And
Okay.
it caught me by surprise when he said we were lovers. And it's like,
Yeah.
huh, I forgot that detail about this movie. Then I go into this movie the same day and I forgot again
Oh
until he goes to like the
no.
memory bank and he sees. I'm just like, oh my gosh, you guys did a terrible job setting this up because I forgot it twice in one day.
Yeah,
Like,
I like the first Doctor Strange. I mean, the first time I watched it, I kind of liked it, but that's because I was in college and I was poor. Uh, but like when I that was like before like we kind of like started the podcast and everything. But I remember I've only seen it maybe I think it's actually only been once. Maybe I do need to revisit it because the only thing I rewatched before this was WandaVision and the
Wise choice. That connected more than that one did.
that and the Doctor Strange episode of What If if he lost his hands heart instead of his hands because that was very tragic.
yes.
And I think that kind of played into this as well. But yeah, I don't know. Like it's kind of like, we don't see them as a couple even within the first Doctor Strange. It's kind of like, that time is long past. And this
Yeah.
is kind of like, the aftermath of everything. But it's still sad to know that like within like every universe we visited, it's like either Strange is dead or it's like it didn't work out with um with Rachel McAdams. It's like it's kind of heartbreaking. Like, they care about each other
Yeah.
so much, but like they said in the movie, what Doctor Strange always has to be one the one holding the knife. Like, he has to be the one in charge, and like that's his biggest flaw. And it's like, we kind of see that, but yeah, it's just very heartbreaking. The kind of
Yeah.
The one time I felt like their romance was in that What If episode, where
Mhm.
Yes.
I remember I wasn't like enjoying What If that much until that episode, where that was some of the best storytelling I've ever seen, like in the MCU.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
It was so, it had that sense of like, it almost felt like Black Mirror, where it had that sense of like existential dread. You usually in the movies Benedict Cumberbatch like plays in, he's always these larger than life, characters, or doing like something like how he does like Power of the Dog. He's a very peculiar kind of character. I mean, he has his own insecurities, but he's also very abusive towards like his sister-in-law. I think the only time that he's really been sympathetic is like Imitation Game.
Or
But
the Electrical Life of Louis Wayne. That was
oh
a good one too.
yes, that
Yeah.
was a really
Mhm.
good one. But in that episode, like you felt like devastated for him. And I
Mhm.
think just bringing that episode like back into my head, like while watching that movie when we saw the Dark Doctor Strange, it kind of helped me buy into that romance like a little more.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great episode of What If.
Yeah.
Like, they're few and far in between for that. Like, I mean, I was surprised that they gave us Captain Breton or Captain Carter, but it works. Well, for the time she was on screen, but
Rest in peace,
I was
Queen.
like, R.I.P. Oh
It's
man.
interesting that you bring that up because that's one of my issues with this film, right? Is that I wanted to understand Doctor Strange and his relationships with these people, right? Like, what is his
Mm.
relationship with Wong? We don't really get a lot of that,
Mm-mm.
Mm-mm.
especially out of all the times we've seen him. And I said this in my review. Um, Doctor Strange is essentially the Black Widow and Hawkeye of Phase 4, right? Where he is a character who's always there, but the story is never really focused on him specifically.
Mm.
And it's a like Black Widow, he's a character I feel like everybody loves Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange. We
Yeah.
love the
Yeah.
character, but even in this film, he mentions a sister that we've never heard of, and it
Yeah.
was at that point in the film where it's like we know nothing about this guy.
Yeah.
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 And
Yeah.
we never will essentially because I unless they tackle it in the third film, it feels like he's the Sorcerer Supreme,
Even though he
in
isn't.
duty, not title.
Yeah.
Mm.
And he's just going to be in that same. And you mentioned that earlier, Christian. It's tragic, right? Because we know that throughout all of the multiverse, he's never going to truly be happy. This is just his life. It's his curse. The
Yeah.
speech Tobey Maguire gives at the end of Spider-Man 1, right? It's his gift, it's his curse to be Doctor Strange. But nice theme there, Sam Raimi. I see what you did there. But
What are you
I
gonna
would
call him?
like
Spider-Man. Doctor Strange. That's already taken.
I love how that comes full circle like 20 years later. It's so
Yeah.
great. But it's just I wanted more from his relationship with this main cast, even with
Mm,
America, right? We know that she was very distrusting at first because of what Supreme Strange did, but I didn't understand what made our Strange different because by
yeah,
all
I get
accounts they were the same person, right?
it.
But for
Yeah.
some reason he made the decision to save her and not to kill her, and it's like
I guess that was
that
his
that
difference.
yeah, that's where I feel like the multiverse scope was a little too small because I feel like
Mhm.
that's a chance to show the evil Strange, to show a Strange who's been pushed too far or one who's too cocky, just so we can see ours is the perfect middle ground of all of them. Instead, everything felt too similar to our reality. Even the Illuminati, it's like, okay, I'm sure Reed is on our Earth. We had a Steve Rogers. We also now have Sam. Nothing's really different. And if Black Bolt from Inhumans is on our Earth anyway, he's on the moon somewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's a really good point. That yeah, and like you said, I was trying to figure out, like, they're like, oh, this Strange is different. It's like, well, why? How? Like,
right.
yeah, he saved her. Okay, cool. But like, I mean, the smart thing probably would have been to do, like Juan said. He's like, kill her. And it's like, I don't know.
Especially when you have Wanda, right? She makes the point of she's the only Wanda in the multiverse who doesn't have her kids. And
Which, which
that,
is also very tragic.
which is tragic,
Knowing,
but that also makes you understand, right, why she's the way she is. Because
yeah,
she's basically feeling like, how come throughout all of the multiverse, I'm the one who can't be happy? And
yeah,
that drives her.
yeah,
Whereas Strange, I can't tell what makes him different. Whereas that one line of
Yeah.
dialogue tells me everything we need to know about our Wanda.
yeah. Especially when she was like, you break the rules, and like, they kind of mentioned, the Infinity Stone situation where it's like, oh, was there really never like any other way, type situation where he effectively, I guess you could say ruined or changed everyone's lives for 5 years. And then,
Yeah.
Wanda saying, like, oh, I break the rules and, I get pegged for the villain. That doesn't seem fair. And she's right. It's
Yeah.
like, all out of all, even the Sokovia Accords, everything that has happened up to this point, where it's like all these heroes and like characters have gotten away with murder, literally. But then when Wanda takes over a town, doesn't kill anyone, gives them, you got the great health benefits, the great new jobs, whatever, whatever. The kids are upstairs sleeping in their beds, doesn't fit, like, she doesn't like physically harm them, but like mentally, like she's like unknowingly torturing them. Like the one time where
Unknowingly, too, though, remember? It's not like she was a monster at that point in time.
right. She's like, well, I'm just gonna
Yeah.
take over this town and make everything mine. Like, no, she was grieving. She lost her brother, she lost her parents, she lost Vision, and where
She
she
lost
had
the
to,
Avengers, too, her
yeah.
family.
Yeah.
And it's like she had to watch the love of her life die twice. And it's like everything's kind of just, I don't know. She's spiraling out of control, but she was right. It's like, Doctor Strange does something, and it's like, oh, it's fine. It's good for the good of humanity. And then when she does it, oh, she's a monster. She's a witch. It's like she literally said in the movie, like, I just want my kids back. But like you said, Mike, it's like, she tries to like take kids, her kids from another version of herself, and it's like, what happens to that Wanda? And like, those kids, and we kind of see that where like they were afraid of her, and she's like, no, no, no. And then when, she kind of meets herself and the other version of herself says, like, they'll be loved, she kind of comes at peace. But it's like she's starting to realize what she it's like relearning the same lesson over with Vision. Like she understands that, Vision is gone. She's kind of come to terms to that. But it's like, she has her kids, and it's like, that's your next of kin. Like that is literally a part of her. She fabricated them into existence. So it's like,
Right.
it's crazy to think about. And it's like, I don't
That
know,
was a
people are,
great line all mothers do.
Yeah.
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 Everyone's, oh, Wanda hasn't been punished properly. I'm like, what are you gonna do to her? Like, that's like trying to punish Superman. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, honestly, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
I will say I've already seen like some reviews saying like, oh, this feels like it's undoing WandaVision. Where I feel like I disagree, where I felt like this was a natural progression of her character. I
Mhm.
mean, I know it in the penultimate episode of WandaVision, we saw her like super heartbroken and distraught after the events of Endgame that led to the events of WandaVision. But she's even more messed up probably after the end of WandaVision, after everything that had happened. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
she can't just be like, oh, I'm gonna go back to like saving the world with the Avengers. She just,
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, she realizes she messed up with like putting that whole town under her spell,
Mm.
and then like having that made herself that perfect life, basically having to say goodbye to the love of her life again, having created these kids that she felt were so real, that she had this such a strong bond with.
Mhm.
I mean, it wouldn't feel authentic if there wasn't some kind of turn.
Yeah.
I mean, or distance or coldness with that character. And I'm glad that they did that.
Mm.
I know this
Yeah.
character has its massive fan base, but at the same time, you can't have her just be perfect. Like, you need to show the Marvel characters that I think work the best are the ones where they show, I mean, they're superheroes, but they also have some flaws. That's
Yeah.
it's always what it's attracted me to the character of the Hulk. It's always
Yep.
what's attracted me to Iron Man,
Yeah.
is that, yeah, they've done some very questionable stuff, like creating weapons, or, having like no control over your emotions or things like that.
Yeah.
But like, I felt like that just made her character all the more powerful, and
Mm.
in a way, all the more relatable.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, think about Darth Vader. Like he's like the biggest mofo in the entire galaxy. And it's like we see how deep and complex, like we see, the lead up for Wanda, and like her kids now, it's kind of like the only real connection she has with Vision, because in this universe, she had those kids with Vision. So it's like, even with Darth Vader, like he's like the best, like, cinematic, like, movie villain ever, because we see, his humble upbringing is, and then him becoming a Jedi, and then everything happening within the Clone Wars, and showing how messed up like the Jedi really are, and then everything that happened with Ahsoka, and then him being on the council but not being ranked like the rank of master, and everything else leading up to it. And it's like you kind of understand the result, and like I understand why Wanda is the way she is. It's like
Yeah.
she hasn't necessarily had the perfect life, and like that's it sucks, but it's like that's kind of like real life for a lot of people. And
Yeah.
it changes you, like, as much as you want to. And some people are just too far from saving. I wonder if Wanda is or not. We don't know, because the last time we saw her, just poof, pyro rubble. So we'll
Yeah.
see. I don't know, but I don't know if she'll have that redemption arc. I kind of don't want her to. Like, just how Kylo Ren should have been too far from saving, because there are some people that it's no matter how much you try to reach out to, like, unlike Vader, that was a very Christian story of, like, the redemption arc. But I kind of don't want her to be like, oh, like, oh, I'm good now. All of a sudden, like, she has this big realization. Then everyone
Yeah.
forgives her, and then everything's sunshines and rainbows, and half the world's on fire. But hey, Wanda's on her side again, so that's fine.
I felt like that's what was going to happen with the way WandaVision ended. But
Yeah.
then you have her reading the Darkhold, and
Mhm.
Mhm.
the Darkhold corrupts your mind. And so I feel like anybody who has an issue with how she's acting in this story has to remember she's reading the Book of the Damned, and it is going to change her forever.
Forever.
and that's why you were talking, Nate, earlier about the ending with Doctor Strange and that third eye. It's like, what does that do to Stephen Strange?
Yeah.
We
Ooh,
I
yeah.
don't know, because the Darkhold is interesting. It's appeared in Agents of Shield. It's appeared in Cloak and Dagger. It has now been in WandaVision and Multiverse of Madness, and it's always worked slightly differently.
Mhm.
And so in Agents of Shield is where it's most featured, just like the MacGuffin of that entire season. And it caught, like, the reader usually ends up dying from insanity in that story
Oh, okay,
until
yeah.
until Ghost Rider, like, takes it back to hell. It's a great season of Agents of Shield, but it, like, I don't think it's gonna push Steven that far. But especially where the post credit scenes go, we didn't even talk about that. Like, he's going to, like, the Dormammu realm or whatever
Yeah, I saw
with the
that. I was like,
Sorcerer
Yeah.
ooh,
Supreme.
interesting. It's like, yeah,
I'm not sure.
Shirley. Who is Shirley Theron playing as? Like, who is that character?
That is, ooh, what's the name? Is it Clea or something like that?
Clea. Yeah. I was
Yeah.
reading up on her today, actually, and she's like who becomes. He actually has a romance with her in the comics, I guess. So, and I think that could possibly. I don't know if they'll go that route. If he's just like, oh, I got to get over uh, Rachel McAdams, but
She's married in his timeline. He needs to get over
it,
that.
yeah. But at the same time, I think she also takes on the mantle of Sorcerer Supreme.
Hmm.
Like, I, even though I had my problems with this movie, I did really like it. The post credit scene, it actually made me more excited for a solo Doctor Strange 3 than him showing up in another crossover event. Because,
Yeah,
I mean, who doesn't love Charlize Theron? I mean,
that is true.
and like her just popping up and just seeing, I think what they're hinting at with the next story is something that will be actually Doctor Strange centric, or at least
Yeah.
him and Clea, like almost like a co-lead. But it will
Imagine them in Mordo, right? You have
Yeah.
Chiwetel Ejiofor, Charlize, and Benedict leading that film. Beautiful.
Great. Yeah. That's I do wonder if they'll get Sam Raimi back for it.
Maybe.
I
I hope so.
I think he'd come back. He seemed like he had fun making this one. Also.
Yeah. I
He
feel
also-
like
Sorry, go ahead.
because he was like burnt out by like Spider-Man 3, and you've heard all of these other directors. Like, I mean, I never really with like Josh Whedon, like that always rubbed me the wrong way when he was on the press for like Age of Ultron and just like calling out Kevin Feige, like being like, I wasn't paid enough for this. I'm like, dude, you're a multimillionaire. Like, sit down, dude. You just made like the biggest movie of the year. Shut up. But like Sam Raimi, he just seems, even though he's like one of the most like prolific directors in the genre of horror ever, he just seems so grateful to like be a part of it. Which, and he's even like, even after everything that went down with Spider-Man 3, he's still like, yeah, I want to do a fourth one.
Maybe not with Sony as the helm. But
Yeah.
He's gonna have to be like, Kevin's in charge of this one.
Yeah.
But like Sam Raimi is a big Doctor Strange fan. So like, and
Yeah.
that really has helped this movie. I know a lot of people were saying that like, the writing kind of clashed with like the direction of the movie. I'm like, I don't know, maybe I'm terrible at picking like what's good writing, what's bad writing, but I do know when things don't go as deep as they should. So I don't know. Do you guys think that the writing and the direction kind of clash with each other, or do you think it was in sync?
I think the writing and direction was in sync. The writing could have been stronger, but I don't
Yeah.
think that's to the fault of Sam Raimi at all.
No,
Yeah.
As a
not at all.
director,
Mhm.
like again, America Chavez's character needed more. I wanted more from Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
I wanted Wong to do something aside from hanging on a cliff for 35 minutes straight.
Strange.
Yeah, and so that I wouldn't pin on his directing clashing with anything. That's just the story needed one more draft of tighten things up here or
Yeah.
add a line here. I don't think that's on Raimi though.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to see Raimi do another Spider-Man, not Tobey Maguire. I want to see like a Tom Holland, Sam Raimi. That's what
Yeah.
I do. I mean, now what? Peter's life sucks. Now everyone's happy that Peter's life sucks or whatever. They're like, I'm like, this is the first time we saw the character, finally going through his high school phase as Spider-Man instead of
Yeah.
like him graduating high school and then like, oh, he's kind of in between jobs and kind of sort of going to college and whatnot. But I mean, I would love to see Sam Raimi come back and do more MCU, whether it be Doctor Strange if he comes back. I kind of hope he does come back for it because it seems that it is a match made in heaven. Like I mentioned earlier, he is a big Doctor Strange fan, and like, why not?
Yeah.
Like I mean, whether Wanda's in it or not, like let the man come back to show business. Have some fun.
Agreed. I have oh sorry, go ahead.
Oh, it's not a Justin Lin situation on Fast X.
He pieced. I saw that video.
That was so awkward.
With
He just sitting there like
I'm like, is this man being held hostage?
it really felt like it. It really felt
That's
like it.
like my new favorite movie.
Vin Diesel's the only person in the entire world who cares about that franchise. I'm sorry.
For real. For real. I have a quick question for you guys though. Do we see the Illuminati return? Not that version, of course, but like 616 Illuminati.
Probably at some point. Because I mean, what's the point of introducing them if you're just gonna kill them off and be like, oh, well, that's it. Like, there has to be a 616 version of the Illuminati.
I could see that happening in like Doctor Strange 3, where it's like we need to create that same thing, but in our universe, just make it, I guess, safer. I don't know. Just don't make the same mistakes.
Yeah.
No, they
Something.
always make the same mistakes. It's gonna be the same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. I, I I could see him doing it, but I don't know. It could feel like almost a little bit too repetitive.
Yeah.
They might call it like a different. The concept of it might be the same, but like they might call it a different name, pull from a different name from the comics.
Mm.
Yeah.
I just don't think they're going to be that quick to bring it back, the Illuminati back.
Yeah.
Especially when like Black Panther is a main member or main player in the Illuminati, and so you can clearly tell we kind of slid Rambo in here to take T'Challa's spot,
Yeah,
and it was kind of awkward because like of all the characters, why is she on this team?
yeah,
I was thinking the same thing.
Yes, that's why it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be T'Challa,
Mm.
yeah.
or Tony Stark, and neither of those actors can or will come back for that.
People were
Yeah.
talking about having was it Tom Cruise as like a Tony Stark
Yeah.
variant. I'm like, I just don't think. I think they're done with Tony Stark, guys. Like,
Yeah.
just let it be. It's moved on.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, it's just phase four altogether. Like it's a learning curve for Marvel at the same time as it is for us trying to understand, the multiverse. Because it's just like with time travel. Like they're really you kind of just have to go with everything. Like not everything's gonna make logical sense, and not everything has to. So it's like I would just let them figure it out because it's like I mean they're diving into something new. It's like I'm sure DC is probably doing the same thing. It's like not everything is just like okay like X, Y, and Z. There's so much going on with the multiverse, and I wonder if it's gonna like begin and end with phase four, and then they move on to something else because like clearly like I guess King the Conqueror is going to be the next big villain, and then maybe Galactus at some point. I really don't know, but like I said earlier in my non-spoiler review, like actually no, I don't even think I said it there. I can't remember, but we're only no, actually, I'm sorry, I said it last night to somebody at our critic screening. Sorry, it's been a long day. Like we can only see we can't see the full road of what they want to do. Like of
Yeah.
where they plan to go. Like we can only like we're only looking at small little pieces of the puzzle that's forming a larger picture, so it is going to be hard to speculate. One moment we may say, oh, like this doesn't seem like it's going anywhere with the multiverse, and then probably by sometime this time next year we're going to be like, oh, so that's what they were doing type situation. So we really don't know until we get there. So it's kind of like with the TV series. It's like, hey, it may start off a little bit slow, but if someone says, oh, but like it starts off slow, like The Office, like US
Oh yeah.
Office, like season one is like probably one of the worst seasons of television ever, but like it gets
Yeah.
better. So you have to
Yeah.
view the MCU as that, like, hey, like it's gonna get better. Like you're gonna hit some bumps along the way, but like, it is what it is. It's that's the draw. Like it's kind of like the deal when it comes to like this large multiverse, like cinematic universe they're trying to build, because I don't really see any other studios trying to do the same thing. So it's kind of
DC.
like, well, yeah, DC a little bit, but it's kind of like, Marvel's had success with it, and you kind of just have to take the faults. You got to take the bad with the good, like 100%,
Yeah.
and just kind of roll with it.
Totally. Totally. It's interesting you mentioned that because it just reminds me of Thanos, right? When we introduced him in Avengers 1 nearly 10 years ago, he just smiles at the camera, and a lot of the audience is like, what is this? And then, 8 years later, the Infinity Saga happens or comes to its conclusion, and you're just like, oh my God, they pulled it off. And so I can see this being a similar way.
Yeah. It's kind
Yeah.
of amazing how well they've gone along without really having a major mess up. Like, I still think Eternals got too bad of a rap.
I
Like,
agree.
that did not deserve like that low of like a critic score. I know it's an aggregator, but like, there's Thor too. Like, I think that's like a bad movie. But like,
Yeah.
As someone who didn't like
Eternal.
Eternals, Loki was in Thor 2. That's the difference.
Uh, but
Hey, I love Age of Ultron, and everybody hates that movie.
I think it's okay. It's
I loved
enjoyable.
it.
Alright.
I love
But
it. It was me and Wanda. I was like, Quicksilver, come on. Like it was great.
all
Those
of
are the days.
these other cinematic universes,
Yeah.
they've had some major stumbles. DC, they had the theatrical cut of Suicide Squad and, well, just Suicide Squad, and then the theatrical cut of Justice League. Oh,
And the
God.
theatrical cut of BVS. And
Oh,
Yeah, exactly. Like,
just BVS. I'm sorry, I do not like
yeah.
BVS. Can't do it.
But
I don't either, but like at least the Ultimate Edition is slightly better.
yeah,
Whatever.
or the Dark Universe with
Yeah,
the Mummy, like, or the
the
I'm not
MonsterVerse,
the
the kaiju.
MonsterVerse.
Yeah,
I'm not even as big on that. I feel like that's pretty inconsistent as well. Like, I didn't like that first like Godzilla movie. Then I actually really liked Kong Skull Island. Then I didn't like
Godzilla vs Kong, or is it Kong?
or
King of the
King of
Monsters.
the Monsters. Then I didn't like that. Then I had fun with
Godzilla vs Kong.
Godzilla versus Kong.
Kong should
Even
have
though,
won. Just want to say
yeah,
that.
I'm more of a Godzilla guy, but it's kind of funny. I like the
Yeah.
Kong centric movies more in that regard. But like all
Same.
these other things, like or the Arrowverse, like that's kind of a cinematic universe on television. Like,
Rest in peace.
yeah, that thing
I
is like
still haven't seen a single episode of Arrow.
I
I haven't seen it.
I love the Flash for like the first
Mm.
like 3.5 seasons. Maybe not love, but I watched it. But like even that is struggling. I mean, like not everything they put out is a home run. And I think like the only
It's not even a base hit.
no
Bro, I
Oh.
watched seasons 1 through 3 of Titans. I know exactly where you're coming from.
I feel like the only thing in like the Arrowverse that they got really like right that I didn't even watch it, but like I felt disappointed when it was canceled was the Legends of Tomorrow because like I knew a lot about that show. I knew a lot of people liked it because it was basically almost like a self parody of the Arrowverse as a whole. But
Essentially.
just it's just kind of amazing going back to Marvel. It's amazing how they've done it so well. And I guess I've learned a lesson today that maybe this kind of like control, this formula is good because it leads to a better franchise as a whole. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
you need a couple Age of Ultrons or Captain Marvels or to really like they can be just okay movies, but then they'll make the strengths even stronger.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
essentially quality control, right?
Yeah,
So everything has to be at least a base level. Some may dip a little bit under or go way above, but
Mhm.
it's always going to be right here. It's always going to be Ant-Man. That's essentially
Yeah.
what I'm saying is like it's never going to be worse than Ant. Not that Ant-Man's bad, but
it's
that's like the bar.
Yeah.
it's kind of like comparing like Marvel's almost, I would say maybe even Nintendo, like
Yeah.
because a lot of people would say, oh, like Nintendo just makes the same games over and over, but it's like their stuff sells
Yeah.
very well and people buy it over and over and over. And I feel like people kind of forget that, like, yes, these are movies, like they're trying to form a cinematic universe, but like they're also products of a business
Yeah.
and you're not going to like everything. Like, I mean, I love Nintendo, but I don't like newer things. I mean, I love the Switch. I love what the Switch does, but it's like, I mean, if anything, like Nintendo just over and over, like their green policy where every single like exclusive is like $60. Why? Because it sells and people buy it. And there's not one bug in a Nintendo game ever. But it's like some things may feel the same, but it's same with Marvel, but it's like it sells and they have that quality control of, it just how they want their games to ship, what they want them to be. Marvel's the same way, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just I just get kind of tired of everyone acting like every single Marvel movie needs to be something new. It has to check all these boxes of it needs to be something new, something different. It needs to be out of the formula, and it has to be good. It's like that is literally impossible. It's
Yeah.
kind of like I don't even take like Michael Jackson, for example, when it comes to like music, like one of the best like entertainers, singers, dancers of all time. But not every single album or every single like song on one of his albums was necessarily a hit. Like I mean, the majority of his portfolio is fan freaking tastic, but he still has his duds, just like any other well renowned artist. Or when it comes to video games, Sony has a great track record of like their single player story driven games, but like they also have some things that they need to work out. But I mean, people still buy it. But it's like you can't check off every single box every single time with every single movie and needing to be different and needing to be out of Marvel, out of the formula, and it needs to be good. It's like it's literally unrealistic expectations that
Pixar.
people have. Yes.
That was all I was thinking about. I mean, yeah, Cars 2, but like, besides Cars 2, all of their movies have a bar.
Yep.
Like, even the ones I don't like, they're still better than a lot of the animated movies that, like, the Western animated movies that, like, come out today. I'll give you some respect with that, Mike.
No,
Studio
I'm
Ghibli.
I'm just sitting here laughing because you mentioned that. And it's like, yeah, like as much as we rag on the Cars franchise or the Good Dinosaur or even
Yeah.
Monsters University, they're still light years better than Boss Baby.
I see what
Yeah.
you did there. I see what you did there. Yeah, yeah. It's just I get tired of unrealistic expectations where Marvel has to be different every time,
Yeah.
and it's like so just go along for the ride. Like you're gonna have your ups and your downs, and just let it unfold the way it's gonna unfold. It's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
You'll live.
It's been a
God.
fun conversation, guys.
Yes.
Can't wait to
Yes.
have you guys back on for some more
Yes.
episodes. If you enjoyed
For
this,
sure.
people listening, we are covering Avengers for its 10th anniversary and Moon Knight. So there's a lot of Marvel stuff going on with the chatter after. Thanks for joining us again, Nate. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Nate Knows Movies, or you can find me on Collider as a resource editor, an occasional critic. I have a review coming up soon for Pistol in the
Nice.
coming weeks, which is the Sex Pistols show on FX. So look out for that.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
Cinelodian, where can we find you, man?
All right, so you can find our podcast, Film Optics, that is Optics with an X, on podcast platforms around the internet, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, iHeartRadio, and then some. So you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Film Optics. Again, that is Optics with an X. We have a lot of fun stuff. Like I said, our non-spoiler review of Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness is up on the podcast now, as well as our episode 5 of Moon Knight and our massive talent review and so many other things. Crazy what's going on. But tomorrow, well, as of this recording, tomorrow is Star Wars Day. So probably by the time you listen to this, Star Wars Day is over. But I do have a definitive Star Wars movie ranking of the 12 Star Wars movies. Of course, the Rise of Sky, excuse me, the Skywalker saga, and then also including the Clone Wars feature film, the animated one, solo Star Wars story, and Rogue One as well. That's going to be dropping on the In Session Film website on May 4th. So this is the May to check out my new definitive ranking of Star Wars over there. So that's just a few places you can find our podcast and a few of my other written pieces as well. Thank you so much, Mike, for having us on. This was a great conversation.
Yes.
Like I said, I apologize if I flew off the handle, but I was like, man, it's like there's always the good and the bad with any movie that you watch. There is really no right or wrong
Oh, yeah.
answer, unless you're David Ayer's cut of the Suicide Squad, or Justice or Justice League, or even Green Lantern for that matter. But thank you so much for having us on. Like, this was a lot of fun, and Like I just want to get back to the theater to watch Multiverse of Madness. Like, I'm gonna take the bad with the good, like I gotta do with my sports teams, Like so
Yeah, for sure. Guys, you can check us out on the Chatter After on Twitter, simply at the Chatter After. You can check this out in the podcast feed, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Radio Public. If you're listening in the podcast feed, you can watch the video feed too on youtube.com/novice-cinephile. I've already got a review of Doctor Strange, spoiler free. If you're listening to this at this point, you don't need to bother with that video. I'm sorry. But we do have, again, tons of Marvel stuff coming up on the channel as well. So stay tuned for that. Gentlemen, it has been an honor having you guys on. It's always a blast talking movies. Can't wait to have you back again. And until next time, have an awesome.
Excelsior!